Hey, bonus episode time! Welcome back to the Vault. We're gonna take a look at 5 Apple prototypes. For the most part, these were scrapped, but some of them did evolve into marketed products. And some of them got radically changed before they sold on the market. So pack your bags because we're going to California to meet up with Apple prototype collector, Hap.
My prototype collection probably has at least 250 pieces in it. 2006 Mac Mini prototype, super early 20th anniversary Macintosh. Japanese LPGA PowerBook, color classic. Various prototype first gen iPads, dual dock iPad, so 1 dock, 2 dock.
Oh wow.
So the W.A.L.T stands for Wizzy Apple Lifestyle Tablet or Wizzy Active Lifestyle Tablet, depending on who you ask. It was essentially to be released in about 1994. It was some combination of a fax machine, email, phone, integrated through a touch display. There's a couple of them that have come out in the wild, 3 that I know of, including my own, to the capacity that the touchscreen I'm still having some issues with. I don't know if that's a driver thing or what the issue is there, but it does have an ADB port, so if I plug a keyboard and mouse into it, which I just generally use for my TAM because it's all in one, I can get it to work. Somebody actually that I bought it from used it at Bell South in the area that they lived, and they were using it currently or actively in the field, and then I guess they scrapped the project. So it's running a very specific custom version of HyperCard. I'm in the process, now that I've got it fully functional, trying to get with some people in San Francisco to archive the data from it, because if that hard drive crashes or fails, which I did have to repair, in order for it to actually start working, then that would be really bad. Why it was scrapped is a tough one, unless you really get to talk to the engineers on the project. I mean, we'll talk about another product here that I know why it was scrapped, but in this particular example, I don't know if they thought that it was competing kind of too much with the Newton, which was a product that was just going to be released, was a little smaller, had its own power supply, was able to be used without needing a power cord itself. Again, they serve 2 different purposes. The W.A.L.T had the capacity to do speakerphone and make telephone calls, whereas the Newton did that. It was more of like a PDA stylus, notes, emails, dictation, which the W.A.L.T did as well. But it was basically, the W.A.L.T being the product I'm talking about, was essentially just a hacked together PowerBook 100 conglomerate of components kind of stuffed into a case that they reworked, hacked some components together in a very raw style way. I mean, there's a lot of literally electrical tape holding these components like in place and covering components so they don't ground out and stuff. The Power Express 9700 was essentially the predecessor to the Power Mac 9600. It was bigger, badder, more expandability. I do, according to my engineer buddy that worked on the project, know why that project was killed. Steve Jobs had just come back. We all know how Steve Jobs felt about expandability and users being able to customize their machines and add things to it. And essentially that was what Steve Jobs did not want, which was expandability, user upgradability, serviceability, had 6 PCI slots, a CPU that you could just pull in and out to do a swap on, CSI, IDE, floppy, CD-ROM. My buddy told me basically that according to him that they were almost close, very close to having the final design, if not basically the final design ready to go. And a lot of people came back from their Christmas basically with a note on their desk that said that your project has been scrapped. Please return any and all of the products and or components to the Apple disposal team essentially, and we will essentially tell you what project you're going to start on next. But like to the point where they had a final working product and Steve pulled the cord on it. With the blue and white and, you know, the mirror door drive and the Quicksilver, I think that, yeah, to a certain degree that there was expandability. And I think at a certain point that if Steve had it his way, that would have never been that way. But there was probably a little bit of meeting in the middle that needed to happen there because, you know, they only had so many USB ports. They only had so many Firewire ports, and they were designing these products for professionals to be able to, you know, connect hard drives and cameras and other, you know, devices that they were trying to market themselves to a very kind of niche market of video editors, photo editing, and that type of stuff. And those computers needed to have the expandability and integration for those devices, who was the individuals they were catering to that market. So Acorn iPhone 2G prototypes, when they were created, I suspect probably either late 2005, somewhere in 2006. They don't share many similarities from what the production phone was. They're all black. They have plastic screens versus glass screens. They have matte screens versus glossy screens. They have raw bezels versus polished bezels. It's not necessarily the hardware that makes them special. Yes, they're all black and they have some components that are different. It's really the software on those that it shows the two different ways Apple was essentially fighting internally about which way to go. I mean, the iPod at that point in time was probably, if not their biggest product. So do you keep going with that scroll wheel integration and something that most consumers are very comfortable with, or do you push that and go down another path, which is ultimately where we ended up? But can you imagine sending a text message, not even a long, a sentence, with having to scroll through each letter back and forth to do each letter? I mean, that would have been ridiculous. It would have taken, minutes to send a 2 or 3 sentence text message. So the dual 1.5 gigahertz G4 PowerBook is really one of the coolest things that I have in my collection. The unreleased stuff is really rare and very hard to come by. From what I know about it is that case that it's in, it's a very raw acrylic case used for very early rapid iteration prototype development, is the only case or anything that has empirical and factual evidence that Apple was actually working on a G5 PowerBook. And the Q51 project is the code name for the G5 PowerBook. And it's fabled, people have talked about them, but nobody's ever actually seen one or really been able to substantiate any evidence that Apple worked on one. I would imagine that the board for that was probably in that acrylic housing at some point in time. Where it ended up, who knows? But what is in there instead, which is also equally interesting and rare, is a red board, dual 1.5 gigahertz G4 configuration. It's actually 2 physical processors, so it's not a single dual core. It is 2 individual 1.5 gigahertz processors on the board. Fastest configuration that they ever released to the public was a single core 1.67 gigahertz machine. With those models, as well as the very early Intel units, there was a lot of heat issues. I remember I had one of the first Intel laptops when I was in college, and that thing would get so hot that if you left it on for a while and put it on your legs, I could easily see you getting a pretty decent burn. So that was kind of why Apple scrapped the G4 PowerPC configuration, and specifically the G5. The G5s ran super hot, and putting that form into a computer, as well as the amount of power that it used, would have been really pretty impossible. So it's a really cool machine. Its Geekbench scores are far superior to any G4 computer that was released to the public. It's a neat machine. Prototype Cube with G4 Cube with the speaker. Picked it up when I was working and doing the stuff with the Cube upgrades. I bought a Cube, just looked like it was in good condition. A lot of sellers on eBay don't take pictures of every single angle, so I was kind of a crapshoot. Just took it looked like it was in good shape, so I bought it, and I kind of started poking around on it and noticed that there was some stuff that looked a little bit different. And then the most telltale one was one of two things. One, when I looked on the back, very poorly, somebody, looks like they'd used a paperclip, scratched out the word prototype. I mean, you can still visibly see it. They didn't even do a decent job at it. And then when I flipped it over and opened it, it had some different stuff on the inside, a red board for the VRM chip. But then when I really looked at the bottom, there was this little round thing, kind of where the handle was, you could see through the mesh, and a wire going to the front of the board. And I noticed that there was an actual speaker that was on the bottom. But what's interesting is where I saw the wire go for the speaker, it actually still has it on all the production ones. It's the 2 little front wires on the logic board towards the front where the CD-ROM area above that goes. Well, I guess it would be more the hard drive area. But there's two little connectors that are standoffs that are got a little 90-degree bend in them that are still in all the boards. I have no idea why they got rid of the speaker. Cubes did come with speakers.
That's one of the very few Macs, if not the only sold Mac that doesn't have a built-in speaker yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I think you could be right. I mean, I'm even going back to the Macintosh Portable, the 2C, the SEs, all of the beige boxes, the G4s, G5s, Power Macs. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I think it might actually be the only Mac that doesn't have a speaker that was built in. Never thought of that. Yeah, I think you're right. PowerBook XXXX is one that they did use on Independence Day. Again, it's the same thing. I don't know if that's the exact one that they used, but I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. I mean, obviously Steve wasn't there when that movie was made, and I don't know why they wouldn't have just put the model number on there versus making a specific plaque. Obviously it's a prototype, but why go to the extent of silk screening a totally random series of letters versus just putting the model on there? I mean, they came in subsequent numbers, 53, 54, 55. Usually when you get stuff like that, or I have other things like that are before they've come up with a number, usually they just leave it blank. So why they would take the time and energy to come up with a machine and a silk screening process for something that was just for the sake of it, I have no idea.
So there you have it, guys. 5 awesome Apple prototypes. And thank you so much to Hopf for helping make this bonus episode possible. Please check out his website for more from him. And if you want to see other unreleased footage that was a part of this bonus episode, plus other goodies, check out Vintage Apple Vault on Patreon and pledge now, and you'll get access to some of that great stuff. Thank you in advance for your support. And I'm also curious to know what your favorite Apple prototype is, even if it's one we didn't cover. Feel free to drop me a line down below. And if you have suggestions for future products you want to see on the show, let me know about that too. But for now, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the not too distant future.